Okay, we are going to share. I do have a group that volunteered to share. I will tell you that I worked with this group a little to ease everyone's comfort level. So who would like to share from your table your answers? Okay, thank you. And we'll have to read them really loud so that the back corner can hear too back there.
For explanation, we said, how does a battery cause a light bulb to glow? Interpretation, how can a schematic diagram predict the outcome of an electric circuit? Application, how can you design an electrical circuit to make a light bulb grow?
Glow. Sorry, that was, yeah. It's glow. There's always one.
Okay. Perspective, why does the United States use AC instead of DC current? Empathy, what would it be like to be an electron as it passes through a simple current? And self-knowledge, what do I truly know about electricity? How do I know it?
Those are good. Thank you. Were there any of those that you don't agree with?
We had some of the same ones that we had in different categories.
So you had them in multiple categories?
Well, we had a different category than them, but we had a conversation about where to put it, and they were the two. They brought up one, and we decided on the other.
Yeah. And when I came over, they did the classic, can you tell me how many of the 6 we have correct? So once I said 2, they obviously knew that they were just switching up a couple, but I think it was the same. There were a couple that...
Interpretation and perspective that mean.
Interpretation and perspective were the 2 that they were waffling on. Was that the 2 that you were...
We were talking about the electron passing through the simple current.
Mm.
And it starts off, what would it be like? So at first we thought empathy, but then we switched to perspective.
Mm-hmm. But it's
actually...
It's the feeling. No, that was an empathy. That was an empathy.
And the schematic diagram, when we were thinking explanation, I think they said application. Unless
It was interpretation.
Oh, interpretation. So we had different ones here.
Well, hang on.
One that you told me.
We were Googling. All right. All right, so the point of having this activity is that these were not all essential questions that are on your paper. These were very topical questions, but it still applies the idea of what types of questions are you asking your students. So if you look at your essential questions and they really are the explanation end of the spectrum, it's probably not an essential question. You know, it needs to be on the upper end where the kids are actually going to be digging into your questions. So just to give you a few more tips on essential questions, so things to look out for as you're creating them. Use the words that make sense to you and to your kids. I was teasing the back table because they're the gifted and talented, and I wanted to make sure that the students, I just wanted to know, I said, would the students understand the word surface? And they ensured me that the students would understand the word surface. If there's any question or that there's a word in your essential question that the students may not know, it is a good idea to select a different word, especially if you have a large ELL or other nationality population, which your school district does. You have a very diverse population. 2 to 5 per unit. So as you're writing, so you might have one large overarching, and I think it was about, it was about 2 to 5. Once you get more than that, the kids don't know what they're aiming for. There's too many. And then also, while you're thinking about these questions, think back to your way that you're going to assess the students. Because if your essential question is about the role the sun playing, I heard over here earlier that, that would be the question you would ask the students to write some sort of explanation or like a claim and evidence piece of writing about why their answer is what, using the information that they've gained through their learning. So always remember that this question should also lead to how you will assess your students. Another thing that may come up, and this will definitely come up when you start writing questions that are skill-based. So in reading, you have, picking out key ideas and details, right? That's a skill. So when you're looking at it, some of your essential questions might be more this way. Or if you teach any sort of activity in a school, and it's not a core area where the kids are actually doing things like in phys ed or in art or in music, your questions might look like something like, when should you use various fix-up reading strategies? So then the kids are really, the essential question is, when would they do this? And then they were learning about them. So know that it may not always be content-driven. It may be actually skill-driven, the question that you ask kids. And maybe in those 2 to 5 questions you have for your unit, some are skill and some are content. So with the next generation science standards, some of you wrote questions that were very content-based, but there was still that idea of kids doing investigations. So maybe writing an essential question about investigations. Yes?
So when you talk about 2 to 5 questions, like trying to piece this together, can you have that, let's say you're doing a 3-week unit on electricity.
Mm-hmm.
Can you have that one that's overarching, so am I understanding it right?
Mm-hmm.
You might have one that's overarching that fits for the whole 3 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
and then throughout those 3 weeks, you have some that's driving more towards
Yeah.
content, skill.
It's all about layering. So, and then you may even have one over all of those for the whole year in your class.
Yeah.
And then, this is all about layering your questions from very large questions that engage students, just open-ended, and then getting down to where you need to be, but still with engaging questions that students can dive into.
So that, back to the slide
Go ahead, Mark.
that I presented, that would be like size and scope.
Mm-hmm.
So you the overarching and then the topical,
Mm-hmm.
and that was addressed on that size and scope.
Mm-hmm. And then this is it's funny that you say that because this was something that was from that. So here was an example. I knew it would come up right now. So here's an example of, one of those overarching questions. So how does an organism structure enable it to survive in the environment? That might be a whole unit. But then this is, it could be a whole unit. It depends on how deep you're going. But the topic might be about insects. So then your next question is specifically about insects surviving. So that's taking it a little bit more narrowed in as you go deeper into your instruction. Yes?
I have a question about something like a reading standard that may not be as big as like a science unit would
Mhm.
be. Would that just be less questions if you have you're working on inferring? Like, you're not necessarily going to come up with 2 to 5 questions for.
And I think you could have, if it's a one skill, with the topics, with content, typically you're covering a few different things, so you might have others. I think that if you can have one framing question that gets it, I think that would be acceptable. I don't see why it would not be acceptable.
So more than likely, though, your overarching question would be, what are the traits or qualities that good readers
Right, and that's
put
a
into
lot of
practice?
things.
Mm-hmm.
And then your inferring would be, your inferencing question you just gave would be more of that topical level that you were just moving
You have
toward.
an overarching question that sort of fits over reading all year, and then you have questions that kind of go underneath.
Year or unit or whichever, right, it's going to fit in that layer, which if you remember also we talked about how the essential questions, especially the overarching, when done that way, that they can change, so the answers can change.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm getting close to you, so I get picked up on the mic.
I know.
And I'm creeping you out. Edit that out, Andrew. She's kind of like,
Awesome. We're going to just let that one out. Now Andrew has to do
But the
something.
overarching piece, so it will, that's why kids' answers to those questions, if they're written, have the possibility of changing, right? Because they're going to add to it. If it is, what are the traits that good readers bring, then they're going to continually build what that answer looks like and refine and adjust it, etc. So.
Thank you.
Is it something that we picture, like these questions being posted in our classroom?
I would post because they're for the kids. They would be every question. The questions are for the kids and to guide them as they're learning and why they're doing it. So absolutely, I would post them for the kids or have them write them somewhere. Yeah. Go ahead.
What type of connection can you help me make? So we're putting these questions in our rooms, posting them, and they're guiding the kids' understandings. But then we also use like I can statements in our room too. So how do these fit with I can statements?
Your I can statements are they're very specific. So you still might have those be objectives at the end. Those are these are all the specific little things. But overall, this is the question we're answering. And when you get done, you should be able to do all of these I can statements. You know what I mean? Like those the I cans they're the answers. That's what the students can do. This is the question that will lead them to be able to do those things. Does that make sense? Go ahead.
There may be a time or many times where you don't consider your I can up front. Am I understanding that right? Because you're almost going to answer the question. I'm trying to wrestle with that because we worked. I don't want to put you on the spot and maybe you know the answer here, but we really worked on.
Yeah.
This is what I'm doing today, but it seems like to me if I'm asking a question, I don't want to give you the answer up front, but I want you to come to the answer.
You want them to know what they need to know so that when you ask the question at the end, they have the answers. So yes, you give them the I can statements, you give them the learning points that are going to happen. Then when you ask the question, it isn't, like we talked about earlier, it isn't necessarily like a surprise, if you will, whatever that overarching knowledge is. Instead, it's all along the way, these are the skills that we're working on, but they are going through a process through the overarching piece. So if I go back to what traits do good readers have, your I can statement is going to be something around the line of good readers make inferences and use that to support claims or opinions. So they know that up front. So at the end of your unit, you might ask something along the lines of what are some of the traits of good readers? And they would then address, I can inference to support my opinion. Does that answer your question?
And I think that there's nothing wrong with saying that I can do this. If you at the beginning, showing them those, knowing that they see them, but then really what's motivating them is that question.
Right.
And then they can refer back and double check to see, can I do those things that my teacher said that I should make sure that I can do by the end of this lesson?
Was your question more around stating the learning objective, that that's an important thing to do? So the I can statement needs to be stated so they know what they're going to learn.
Right.
That needs to happen. So what we're suggesting is, as Jen just explained, was that the thing to create alternate ways for kids to imagine how to show that they understand that come from the way the question is framed, the overarching question. So there's nothing wrong with letting them know what it is they need to know. It's the process in which they're going to take ownership and obtain that learning. And then the frame that they have that is through that overarching question.
As we have that overarching question, kids are always wanting a little prompt, or sometimes you could take your I can statements and say, using what you knew or what we
Sure.
learned, answer this big question.
Yeah.
It gives them a starting and jumping off point, rather than just posing that question, sometimes that's the hardest question to get started.
Mm-hmm.
So to say, using this I can, this I can, and this I can statement, answer that question.
Yeah. Did you hear? Right there? Okay. Any other thoughts right now? Okay, so just when you go back and you start revising your questions, in the beginning, Mark had a list of 7 characteristics of an essential question. And the best thing really to do is write your question if you're in a collaborative group. Go back and look at those 7 aspects of an essential question and just check on your question to see that, ensure that it does hit all of those 7 characteristics of a good essential question. And know that they do continue to evolve over time. You're going to find that some questions are more engaging for kids than others. Some might not work the first time, and know that you will find questions, though, it just, like it said, it's hard and it's going to take a little bit of time, but once you have those questions in place, the level of interest and, enthusiasm the kids will have and connections to why they're learning things is going to it will ramp up. So, okay, the next session, or next segment is going to be with Allison, and she's going to talk about how to use them in classrooms.